Yeah. So we ready?
As soon as you see that, switch to camera. You can go.
Okie doke. Welcome to Chattanooga 2023 Hamfest. I'm Gary Beckstead. I'm with the North Georgia GMRS organization. I'm the founder and owner of the organization. My wife and I and one other gentleman by the name of Bracy Popple got together one day at a McDonald's and decided, hey, why don't we put up a repeater somewhere and see what we can do? GMRS seems to be something that would be fun to do. Those were humble beginnings back in 2007. We had no money. We had very little influence on where we could go or what we could do. So I took it upon myself to go ahead and expand upon my passion with radio. Here's a picture of me. I'd say the younger version. I'll date a lot of folks here. That picture was taken in 1960 on my CB radio at my home in Cincinnati, Ohio. 1960. My dad's license was KLM. KLM 1613 was his call sign, and that was in that chair on that radio. I began to enjoy and love the passion of two-way radio, and there the thrill started. So,
don't look that old. You just don't look that old.
I'll be 73 in 2 months.
Well, I'm 75. So
There you go. So I'd learned about GMRS, and I thought, well, that sounds like something pretty interesting that I'd like to get involved in and explore. So I put up a tower in my backyard in Duluth, Georgia. I got a couple pictures just to kind of share with you folks. I dug my hole for the foundation, and actually that hole ended up being about 8 foot square. I ended up having to take out an extremely large stump in order to make room for the tower. And there we began to erect a 75-foot self-standing tower in the backyard. Believe it or not, that morning, when I had a bunch of friends show up to help assemble the tower, I got up that morning and I was scared to death. I didn't know whether I could do this or not. And I strapped on this climbing harness, and this would have been the first tower I ever climbed in my life. But we made through it. I got over the fears of the tower moving around and carrying on, and we started stacking sections and put it together and pretty much erected that tower with an antenna on it by the late afternoon. So I just share some of these pictures with you so you can kind of see our humble beginnings and how we got started. And we put up a GMRS repeater on that tower and started talking to people in the Duluth, Norcross area. And we began to really become interested in having people help us talk about it. So then I decided, well, what else can we do? We need to be on a taller tower. We found out real quick that you're not going to propagate a signal very far if you don't have a good tower. So in driving around, I happened to be out in Monroe, Georgia, which is a town that's kind of northeast of Snellville, Loganville area out that way. And I'd spotted this tower way off in the distance. I was a good 5 miles away and I could see this tower. So I started driving towards it because it was extremely tall. And I pull up to the gate and here's what I see. The grass is about 3.5 feet tall. The only thing that was on that tower were these microwave dishes or horns. Of course, I didn't know anything about this tower or what it was, but there was a placard sign on the tower gate. I called the phone number. I distinctly remember it was 3:30 in the afternoon on a Thursday. I called the number and a gentleman answered the phone. He was with a company at that time called Vanguard Wireless. They owned the site. And I told him I was at the gate and I wanted to talk to him about the tower. And he said, what's the number? I gave him the number that was on the gate. He says, okay, yeah, I see where you're at. I said, I have no money and I'm interested in wanting to put up a community repeater. I've tried to talk to other companies and they just want exorbitant amount of money and I can't afford it. And I'm just wondering, this place, is it active? Is it vacant? He says, we bought a bunch of towers a long time ago. He says, that site has not had anything on it probably in 20 years. And I said, well, what kind of deal can we work out? And the man immediately said to me, he said, well, let me ask you something. Can you cut grass? I said, well, heck yeah, I can cut grass. I'll be happy to cut grass. He says, I'll tell you what, I'll get my secretary to put together a lease for you. He said, if you promise to cut the grass 4 times a year, kind of look after the place, clean it up. He said, you can put an antenna anywhere on that tower you want. You can put your repeater inside the building, wherever you want. He said, I'll pay for the electricity because I've got a strobe light up on top of that tower. And he said, you know, you help me, I'll help you. And I said, you got a deal. And I asked for his name. He gave me his name. And I said, are you at the home office? And he says, yeah, absolutely. He said, I'm the president of Vanguard Wireless. He said, I own the company. I about dropped. I couldn't believe it that I was talking to him and he was actually being that nice. Turns out Vanguard Wireless owned 1,875 towers across the United States and New Mexico. They were a huge company. So we started, a couple of us got together and we started to cut the grass. This is about a 3-acre property and a lot of the properties are identical and they look the same. I actually had to go out and rent like a DR brush mower. Even though the grass was not tall, the lower stuff was very thick. I mean, my riding mower wouldn't even go into it. It was that thick. It had been there, not cut for probably 10 years. So we rented a DR brush mower and we knocked it all down and then we came back in and used riding mowers and cut the grass. And when we were done, this is what the site looked like. So I sent him a bunch of before and after pictures. There was a lot of garbage in the building. We hauled out about 8 pickup truckloads of junk out of there. And I sent him before and after pictures, and he was so impressed. He said, you've made this place look like a park. And I said, well, we'll take care of it and we'll be good stewards. He said, I'm going to send you a spreadsheet of all of our towers in Georgia and Tennessee. And he said, if you find any sites that you feel would be beneficial to your cause, let me know and we'll do the same arrangement. Well, that was the primary reason that North Georgia GMRS began to grow, was because we had this relationship with this company. So from there, we began to explore tower sites, look at them, work at them, design if we wanted to get involved or not. And so we started our trek of building our organization. Here's an example of our first repeater there at that first site. That's a Tate repeater, and we had really good success with it. Here's another site in Ball Ground, Georgia.
Now which was that first site?
First site was Jersey.
Is it still active?
Yes, that site is.
What's it called now?
It's called Jersey as well, Jersey 700.
Okay.
That's it right there. Through the years, the company had a scrapper come in and he removed all those big horns off the top of that tower. A tornado had come through north of there a little bit and stressed out one of the domes and cracked the bracket, and it was up there wobbling back and forth. So now the tower, if you see that tower, all those horns at the top are gone, and the only thing you see up there basically is the top of my antenna. Now, midway down, right around in this section right in here, since then, a cell phone company has come in. I think it is AT&T. They've got some antenna pods on that tower, but we're the only commercial GMRS type system on that tower, but that's the Jersey site. So moving on to the next site that we looked into was the Ball Ground site. Now I know John will be familiar with this site. He's been there a few times. This was the site when I rolled up on it the first time. We had to cut trees down just to be able to get to the front door of the building. This site had laid dormant for 15 years, no attention whatsoever. We brought in a crew of volunteers. There was about 20 of us that day. We brought in chainsaws and weed eaters and a chipper, and we cleaned this site up to get rid of the vegetation that was on it. That's what the top of the tower looks like. And I think an owner now has cleaned off those horns as well. But that's how much, look how big those trees are inside the tower yard itself. And that we had to clean up. Here's another site that some folks may be familiar with. This is actually technically the Somerville site. We had to decommission that, and I'll tell you about that in a little bit. But this is a standard AT&T microwave site, standard I call it a cookie cutter site with the same building, the same tower. There's several of these around Georgia. So from that, we started out, as I said, we had limited funds. We put our first repeater up in Duluth. We started searching for towers. We built relationships, and we went through a very large learning curve. We were very lucky to find a lot of sites from this same company. I'll name a few: Jersey, Ball Ground, Sassafras, Statham, Columbus, Georgia, McDonough, Zebulon, Lookout Mountain, Raccoon Mountain, Cades Cove, Somerville. Those were the relationships that we built. We had lots of members, but limited donations. So when I started the organization in 2007, we didn't charge for memberships. We accepted money as donations. Of course, having 7, 8 tower sites we were now taking care of, going out and cutting the grass 4 times a year kind of put me in a position where I was loading up the mower every weekend and going out and cutting grass. I actually have burned up 3 riding lawnmowers cutting grass. That much grass we were cutting on hot summer days. We would go through them. But we decided, after building these sites and causing these repeaters to go live, we discovered we had, at that time, 12 separate islands of operation, because we had 12 separate repeaters. So you had like 12 groups or 12 cliques that were all on their own using these repeaters, and they knew nothing about anybody else. And we started to explore the concept of linking to figure out how could we link these together. Instead of having individual islands, we now would create a region to where people could talk to each other further than just within their own little group. So we ran through a lot of trials and tribulations and failure and a huge learning curve putting together a linking organization for our repeaters. We were working on exploring more reliable linking technology, and we were building and testing paths along the way. Then all of a sudden in 2016, it was decision time. We had a growing organization. We had probably 400 members that were on our roll, voluntary contributions. Our typical annual budget, primarily gasoline, transportation costs, and just general maintenance, would run around $7,000, $8,000 a year. Our total donations coming in were only about $2,000 to $3,000 a year. So guess who footed the bill for the rest of the way all those years? I didn't mind that. I was very fortunate enough to have the funding to do that. But then decision time came in 2016 when I decided to retire from my full-time job after working 51 years. Now, not for the same company, but paid my taxes for 51 years, and it was time to hang it up. And I was employed by and I had a very lucrative job with a communications company, and I was selling radio equipment to businesses, to schools. And I represented a product line called Harris Communications, and I sold radio systems. Yep, I've sold radio systems to a lot of major county public safety organizations. Henry County, these are down in Georgia, Henry County, Newton County, Spalding County, and my biggest customer was Fort Benning. We had a lot of Harris equipment at Fort Benning. But it was time to retire. I was ready to go. So I had to gather my leadership team together a little bit and say, okay, guys, I'm retiring. We're going to have to come up with a way to support this organization because, you know, us old people like to talk about fixed income, but in reality, we're all on fixed income. I can't afford to fill the kitty like I have in the past. So here's my suggestion. Either we're going to cut back on a bunch of tower sites to cut our cost, or we're going to start charging for a membership to help support the organization. That was a big step, and my group at that time said, let's do it. And we weighed the pros and the cons. People are going to get mad at us, people are going to leave us, people are going to abandon us. And we said, well, what else can we do? You've done enough as much as it is. And at that point, I probably had close to $125,000 of my own money invested in all these repeaters and all this equipment and all the labor and money that we spent making this happen so far. So we converted our membership from contributions to a paid membership. The membership plummeted from 426 members to 121 members. Now, granted, I'll admit, we cleaned out a lot of dead wood. I found it interesting in developing this that the people that paid in and donated money to help support used the system very little. And the people that didn't pay anything used the system all the time. It just amazed me. And I thought this is a real lesson in life of how people are. So the challenge was before us, and how do we grow the membership? What can we provide besides a GMRS repeater? Those were some of the challenges we came up with. So the membership plummeted. Like I said, we cleaned out a lot of dead wood. We then began in January of 17 collecting memberships, and we started to grow. And as you'll see in a chart here, if you look from 2007, if I can get here where I'm not going to interfere with the picture. When we started in 2007, I don't know if you can read this, we had 21 members. And so here we grew to 40, 75, in 2010, 101, 160. We're growing on up here, and then boom, here we come where we convert from voluntary contributions, 426, we drop to 121. So then starting in 2017, that year we grew to, I think it's 150 or somewhere like that. But you can see our growth has been steady. But the question is why? What was the secret? Radio's a radio, repeater's a repeater. You put up a repeater in one area, maybe somebody uses it, maybe they don't. But we came up with something new, and thanks to Justin and Julie, we developed net control. And I would say, in my opinion, a star was born. Julie, Justin's wife, became an instant hit on the radio. So Justin and Julie, from their home in Woodstock, would connect to the northern repeater, at that time known as sassafras, and they would control a net. And I think it was like nightly, maybe? They did nets quite often. But Julie was the hit of the crowd, and that really caused the acceleration of our membership to continue to grow year after year. Now, we would grow, and then at the end of the year, if people didn't renew, we would purge them from our list. So we would go up and down, but incrementally, we grew each year after that, and it was quite surprising that people took an interest and paid for their membership and supported us as they did. This was a picture I took of them the day that I informed them that we were going to be making some radical changes. They came down to my shop. So one of the benefits, and we're still talking in the past about North Georgia GMRS, the past, the present, and the future, one of the things that we chose to do was do net control, and we developed what we called membership gatherings. We would go to different places and different restaurants, and people would show up, and we would gather together and have some friendship. These are some pictures of some of just that that's there. I think this was at a barbecue house in Lithia Springs, if I'm not mistaken. So we've had a lot of friendships, and this is one thing my wife and I have talked about quite a bit is when we started this organization just a few weeks ago, we talked about we never ever imagined that we would be part of an organization that would create so many friendships. Not only for us, but also people within their communities amongst themselves with the common bound of radio. And so we also continued to work on reliable linking and improving our linking system. We did balloon launches and we did fox hunts. We launched a GMRS Parrot repeater on a high altitude balloon. It went to 103,000 feet before it burst. We had a GPS tracking device on it and we were able to recover it when it landed back down. And we really enjoyed people calling in all over the country on that Parrot repeater. And since then, I've learned there's competitions where we can do that and get points and actually get our name on a roster.
Is that the same as store and forward?
Say again?
Is that the same as store and forward?
No, this was actually a live Parrot. It received it and retransmitted it at the same time. So that worked that way. So we're rocking along. Our growth is going well. We're making headway. And once again, we're faced with another catastrophe. 2020, COVID hits. COVID hits. And the world shuts down. Nobody at that point knew what was going to happen. But for North Georgia GMRS, it was a blessing in disguise. We listened to the conversations. We heard the needs of many of the radio people talking. And we got busy and did what we could to help ease the concerns. We remained strong and ever present on the airways. And we did things like creating a private Facebook page. And any of you guys that know me, I'm not a big fan of Facebook. And I've told my folks that, and I've asked them, come up with another platform where we can do what we're able to do on Facebook, and I'll entertain it. But for now, that's where we're at. But I am proud of our Facebook page. It's a private page. We don't put up with any shenanigans or any bullying or anything like that. And if people get out of line, we'll throw them off. That's not the place for that. And that helped quite a bit in creating that page. Net control operations stepped up and made our North Georgia GMRS organization network a fun and entertaining place to gather. Our team also created a much needed distraction to a membership who was amazing. Their support exploded our growth, literally exploded. Our net control operations are the catalyst of our membership gathering and drive. I give total credit to the Jeff and the Julies and the Jeffs and the Kates and what they do with net control every Thursday night. And we also have additional nets like the kids net that John and Victoria put on for us. And we have a prepper net that's done by David and Lisa. And we're growing and we're always taking in information to do that. So we made it through the COVID years. We provided our membership. Again, our membership continued to grow, really grow. It really blossomed. And once again, just as we're moving along and we think things are doing just fine and we're going to make it, disaster strikes again, December of 2020. The company that I had established this tower relationship with for all these many years, from 2007 to 2020, their representative calls me up right before Christmas, and he says, I got some bad news. I said, what is that? He said, the company has been sold to American Tower, and we all have lost our jobs. American Tower is not going to hire us. And they sold that company for $3.6 billion. Almost close to 2,000 tower sites across the United States and New Mexico were sold. So I was then informed that the new company would not honor and renew our leases in coming 2021, and we would have to begin to vacate the tower sites that we were on that they now owned. That was a major blow, a major blow. In fact, this picture before here where we saw Julie and Justin, I called them down and sat them down and said, I got bad news, and maybe a little bit of good news. So I shared with them that we were going to have to come off of the Somerville site. We were going to have to come off of the, at that time it was known as Sassafras site. We were going to have to come off of a total of 5 sites. They're not on this map. But we were going to have to vacate them. We had a site down here halfway between Noonan and Columbus, down here in this area here. We had to come off of that one. We had to come off of one in Statham, which is out here outside of Lawrenceville. There were 5 sites we had to leave. 3 of the sites were big mountaintop sites, big power sites for us. And I can remember that phone calls have happened just this morning. I literally got sick to my stomach because I'm thinking, this may be the death of North Georgia GMRS. What are we going to do? So the major tower company, after we were with them 13 years, sold out. We lost leases to 5 sites. And once again, we were faced with the question, now what? Well, in the past, we seemed to do pretty good when we are faced with adversity. My team gathered together, and I decided we're going to leverage relationships. We're going to explore new options. And once again, determined we're not going to give up. Along the way, we found many new sites. Many were better than ones before. We were very lucky to be able to negotiate a lease with the lady that owned the property right next door to our Sassafras site, which is up on Monument Road in outside of Jasper. And that became our flagship site. It's a tower site that we spent a lot of time, a lot of energy, and a lot of money. You'll see some pictures here. But it was going to represent our primary site, and that's why I named it Flagship. Oh boy, did I hear the crying when we changed the name from Sassafras to Flagship. You know, it was like changing somebody's baby's name. It was unbelievable. But I had a vision that the Flagship site was going to be our central point, and it's maturing into that. So the year of 2021 was a year of infrastructure growth, causing hundreds, and I mean hundreds of man-hours in work at tower sites and dedication of funding for new equipment and supplies. We gathered, I forget how many weeks we gathered up there. We had a tower that we had to, I'll skip ahead here to a minute to show you what we had. If I can get an overall picture of it. Maybe not. We had a 165-foot tower. It was a guided tower. All right, Gary, get with the program. I'm revealing some of my snapshots. Well, here's one here that shows a little bit. This tower is 165 feet tall. It's guided. It has a ladder in the middle of it that you could climb, but it was a straight vertical ladder, so it was still quite a job. It had 14 commercial antennas on it. This tower has been dormant for 12 years. Nothing has worked or been active on that tower in 12 years. It was owned by a man named Dean Biskey. They named this place Biskey Mountain. Dean's vision, he bought the property up there. It's right up on top of that ridge line on Monument Road. And he built the building, built the tower, erected the tower, and he sold commercial repeater time on it. He had paging terminals up there. He had a thriving business, a big booming business, and this tower was full of antennas. But they were all abandoned. They were broken. There was nothing reusable on it except maybe the side arms. That was reusable hardware. Everything else, there was feed lines hanging off of this thing, blowing in the wind, swinging everywhere for years. And so our first mission was we gathered there, and we spent probably 3 or 4 weekends, Saturdays and Sundays, climbing this tower and slowly stripping off all of this equipment that was up on it. It was a tremendous ice load. That the tower had all these rungs and the guy wires. In the wintertime, the ice would collect on them, and you would have chunks of ice that were as big around as a liter bottle of drink would fall off of they would melt and fall from the tower and hit the metal roof and puncture the roof of the building, destroy the joists that held that roof there, and would just do tremendous damage. So we knew that we needed to put a roof on the building, of course, but we needed to clean off all the garbage that was on that tower. So we worked there a long time and stripped all the equipment off, and then we began to bring up our new antennas for our GMRS equipment. This is a typical DB420 open dipole antenna. To me, it's probably the Cadillac of antennas for commercial use. I would say 99% of all of our antennas are this particular antenna. Interesting note, I used to buy those at cost from a dealer, and they ran around $975. I just recently bought 2 of them because I learned the price was going up, and also at $970, the shipping was only $100. Today, that same antenna is $2,015 and shipping is $300. So, and as everything else, they're getting harder to get. So we bought a few to have in inventory, but it is a antenna to reckon with. It can survive 150-mile-an-hour winds. I've taken down those antennas that were 20, 25 years old and swept them, and they were in perfect shape. They were very usable, so it's a good product to have. So we continued during 2020 through 2021. Our membership grows. It grew from 158 to 646 paid memberships. I get to thinking, we might be doing something right. So here's some pictures along the way. This is a picture of me up on top of one of our sites. I was in about a 40-mile-an-hour wind in the wintertime doing something. I don't remember what it was, but we always had a good time and had a smile on our face.
What frequency was Flagship on, or is it still active?
Oh yeah, Flagship is very active. It's our premier site right now, and that's on, it transmits at 462.675.
Okay.
Yeah, that's our premier site right here.
So I hit that site from 109 miles away with a handheld motion radio.
Wow, where were you? On another mountain?
On a ridge near Luminary, Tennessee.
How about that? It's phenomenal. When you got line of sight, you can really do some fantastic things. That's great.
It's the same frequency and the same squelch code as a repeater in Knoxville.
Yes, it is.
So I had
And
to start when they found out where I was.
well, and I know the owner of that repeater very well. He also owns the tower that we're about to go on in Cades Cove. He put up a new tower there. And I knew we existed on the same PL tone. We never figured there would be a problem because repeaters don't talk to each other.
Right.
But then one of his following that was building a net up there, this guy would jump in his van and drive up on some mountaintop and run net control from his van. And all of a sudden, his people are talking to our people, and our people are talking to his people through his net. And a lot of confusion started. So we decided, instead of asking them to change, we went ahead and changed the PL tone at Flagship to a digital tone, and that eliminated all that controversy. So we all get along in the same sandbox without any problems. So the point is after when COVID hit and we got through COVID and we popped out on the other side, and then we dealt with the selling of the sites, we started looking for new sites. Our membership was great. They supported us. They stayed with us. Again, you can see the numbers change. Like at the end of 2020, we were at 398. And then when we started up the year and we did the purge, we were down to 321. But look what happened. Between the start of 2021 and the end of 21, we grew to 646 members. That's phenomenal. Phenomenal. And if you are members of our organization, as you pay for that membership, as you go on our website and you fill out the information and you do the PayPal payment, that comes into my computer in the office, and I'm the one that sits down and pulls your information. I assign you a TAC number on the spreadsheet, and then I turn around and put your information into the letter, the welcome letter that you get. So each member, it takes about 6 minutes for me to do that total process on each transaction. But your letter that comes from me is a personal letter. It doesn't come as a computer-generated thing. So as automated and wonderful as our organization is, it all bogs down to manual labor in my office when it comes to processing our memberships. I would love for somebody to automate that. That'd be great, but for now, it's what it is. But when we renew our memberships at the end of the year, sometimes it can get quite daunting when I've got 40 or 50 new memberships to process. It's like lock the dog up and go get a Coke and sit down and get busy. So along the way, we discovered a very inquisitive and interested gentleman by the name, and I'll introduce him, John Wolf, Atlanta 810. And John quickly showed us what we needed to do to improve our linking organization and our system to bring it up to speed. And so while we were shut in, members are talking, sharing, and helping with each other, and a new world of friendships in the world is making. And our linking improved that immensely. And I can't thank John enough for his hard work and commitment, because it was a struggling venture to try and link. There's a lot of linking technology out there. There's a lot of different attitudes and ways to do it. And there's right ways and wrong ways, and there's easy ways and hard ways. But I think we have a good system. It proves out to be very reliable, and we're very happy with it. So we've gotten through a lot of the hard times. We've gotten to the point where we're stable and we're up and running, and we now can declare ourselves, we are North Georgia GMRS. So now I'll bring something to light that you people right here in Chattanooga endured and experienced if you're in this area. In the spring of 2022, we lost access to both of our primary GMRS repeaters here in the Chattanooga Basin. Both the Lookout Mountain and the Raccoon Mountain sites were lost. Now, there's a lot of stories, and there's a lot of rumors, and there's a lot of nasty things being said, but the truth of the matter is, this was caused by the sale of, yet again, another company selling off. So the company that we had a relationship with was very gracious to us, and we were on Lookout Mountain for a long time, probably 7 years. It was nothing new. But the company owner got older. He decided it was time to quit and get out of it, so he sold the business. And of course, I have no compunction to say anything negative about it. The new company came in and said, look, we're all about making money. We're going to repurpose the repeater that you're using, that we've graciously allowed you to use. We're going to repurpose it, and we're going to sell airtime on it, so we're going to need to shut down your frequency. That happened at both Lookout and Cades Cove, or Raccoon Mountain. It left us with only the Chat 700 site online, and once again, we rallied our relationships, sat down with members of the Chattanooga Regional Amateur Radio Club, and we discussed what was really needed and how we can make things happen. Since that date, which was not long ago, just this past year, we've stood up 5 new repeaters here in the Chattanooga area. We already had Chat 700, which is over in East Brainerd, and we also had Cades Cove. That's we consider that part of the Chattanooga system. The 5 new repeaters that we brought online are what's represented up here with Georgetown, Ottawa, and White Oak. Of course, we lost Somerville. You remember that from that conclusion. So we stood up additional repeaters, and we also stood up a very coveted site up on Fort Mountain, which I was excited about because that covers the I-75 basin very well from basically Cartersville all the way to Chattanooga. None of this would have been possible without the help of many members of the local amateur radio club here, primarily represented by Gary Ownsby. Gary was very beneficial in introducing us to tower owners and companies that were interested in helping a nonprofit organization continue to grow, and we're very thankful for that organization's help. From this success, we were able to help with the challenges of a local Skywarn operation. Along with the amateur radio club, Skywarn net operations are now provided on a regional linked basis through our network. Now before, the Skywarn up here was only done with the amateur radio community, but since we have taken on the vision and the mission to help merge GMRS and amateur radio together as kindred spirits, recognizing their separate licensing, separate situations, but collectively we can represent and do a lot of good things. So we brought in GMRS people to do assistance with Skywarn on GMRS frequencies at the same time that the Ham Club is doing their Skywarn on their ham frequencies. So it's a blending of two disciplines that's been brought together. So that kind of brings us to today. When I left here Thursday afternoon to drive up here, I processed a few more memberships, so my slide is old. Our total growth right now is 914, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's where we're at. I give you some accurate numbers. 914 licensed contributing members. Some folks know this and some folks don't, but out of the 914, 49.8% of that 914 are amateur radio operators. That actual number is 358 in our organization. Sometimes I like to brag when I want to irritate certain people that I'm the president of the largest ham club in the United States. Now, you could argue that, but I got some numbers here that show I got a pretty good following that is in our organization. But anyway, it's all about fun. We have a total of 1,383 issued TAC numbers. One thing we can say with certainty, and we are recognized as the largest family-based GMRS network in the United States. I get calls from people all the time wanting to do what we've done and duplicate it, and I give them some guidance and wish them luck and tell them, hang in there and stay at it and work as best you can. So that kind of brings us through the past and the present, and that's where we're at. I'm very excited about the future. We have some future ahead of us, I'm sure. Of course, every year I tell my crew, you know, next year will be an easy year. We're not going to do too much, and they all roll their eyes and go, yeah, sure, you know. Like I said that last year, and we stood up 5 repeaters. Leading up to present day operations, our membership has grown, fallen back, and continues to grow even more. We refined our net control operations and programs, and going into the future, begin the reliance on a very strong and reliable Starlink satellite network system at our flagship site. So our internet at the flagship site is currently supported by Starlink. We're working on microwave sites from flagship to other sites. Blue Ridge was one. That one went down on us. We're working on replacing that. We currently maintain 21 linked GMRS repeaters. So the way the system works is we have these, we call them, they look like clouds, but we have a certain name for them. So we created a cloud for the Chattanooga, and this map is not current. We have out there at the tables and stuff, we have the current map, but we have the ability to link together the Chattanooga repeaters separately, and they're one cluster, and then we can link them down into the Atlanta regional network and link everything together. But there's a total of 21 of them linked together. I'll try and wrap this up as quick as I can. We now have repeaters in Georgia, Tennessee, and we have one in Ocala, Florida as well. It's linked into our network. We have completed and rolled out our new Vanguard Communications Education trailer. It's located out in the boneyard, and please go through and take a look at it. Justin and Jeff have worked tirelessly on that for the past several months, getting it ready. We tend to make a lot of public appearances with that and different events in order to provide awareness. We just recently finished up, I don't know how many of you know about Jeep Fest. That's a big happening that took place a month or two ago, and that was a big event. How many Jeeps showed up at that, Jeff? John? 3,000 Jeeps showed up at that event. Many of them are throwing away their CB radios and they're putting GMRS radios in their Jeeps. Just recently this month, we have created and posted a live stream of our Thursday night net operation on our very own YouTube channel. So if you go to YouTube and you just YouTube and search North Georgia GMRS, you will now see the archived live streams. This presentation is being recorded for live stream to go out on YouTube. This is a fantastic improvement in our organization, and I have to thank all of those involved, Justin and Jeff and John and everybody, even the ladies of the group that put on their own little presentations on it. This is going to be huge because with our growth, it seems like about every 60 days we get the same questions of new people. What's SWR? What about my antenna? What's this? What's that? And we repeat all this on our Facebook page or on the nets, and then it's forgotten about. So now, when we do these things, they'll be in archive. In 2024, next year, my guys don't know about this, we will begin to record and publish educational videos on camera, live discussions for our membership and viewing audience on the above-mentioned YouTube channel. I think that's going to be a huge benefit for us. I think it's going to bring us into the next step. I wanted to share with you a couple pictures real quick. This is Julie at one of the net control stations that they have set up, and it's changed quite a bit because they keep improving things. And I wanted to introduce to you my crack technical team here that does all my radio repair work for me. They stay pretty busy, locked away, and they don't come out very much except for a couple bananas from time to time. But we do have some great folks that help us. Here's some pictures of our Ubiquity microwave antennas that we've put up at Flagship and Blue Ridge for work. And again, more gatherings. I need to spend a minute or two talking about this. Is our very first luncheon or dinner that we had for lifetime members. We offer a lifetime membership. Every year in the spring, we have an annual barbecue. And I implore you, come. When you hear us advertising it, make plans, come to it. I've had people tell me that the price they paid for the annual membership was far worth it compared to how much money. This man right here bought a family membership of $155, and he brought his whole family, and they had top-of-the-line barbecue dinner, all you can eat. And he came to me and said, this organization provides so many benefits and perks to us. This is a picture of our last gathering. I think for 2022, was it 2022? Yeah, pretty much 2022 going into 23. Lifetime member awards that we gave. Lifetime membership, one-time payment, $1,500. You have a lifetime membership. Folks that joined a long time ago that did that, they're riding it now. They got a free membership. But it's a very special group. We give them a special plaque and trophy, and we acknowledge their support. Again, our membership grows. And what are we about? I can't remember his last name. Is it Still? Do you remember? Yep. We are about family. And so I think it's important that we end the discussion that that's what we're about. We're a family communications organization. We are, to me, the catalyst of the next generations of youth and amateur radio. We push amateur radio, and if we put a radio in somebody's hands, this man over here, little John, his son, he gets on the radio and talks as much as his daddy will let him. one day we hope he'll be an amateur radio operator. But that's kind of where it's at, and we're looking forward to a better year this year. Our engineering group is going to be refining some of our equipment. And then one thing, if Jeff will give me a second. Future, where are we at, what's coming? We don't know what's coming, but I've been in the business long enough to know that on our doorstep is the possibility that the FCC will take us down the path of migration towards narrowbanding, just like they did commercial. Their whole mission was to tighten up the bands to make more room. So I would be not wise to consider the fact that this is going to be a possibility that they're going to mandate on GMRS that we go to narrowband. That in itself is not a problem for us. Why? Because our entire fleet of repeaters are narrowbanded capable. So all I got to do is show up with a programming station and click one button, and we go from wideband to narrowband. No changes. The radios being sold today are narrowband compatible. So that transition's going to come. But what will come after that? You can't be foolish to think, well, that's it. No. What's next? What's the hot item in commercial radio right now? DMR. DMR is a different animal, a totally different animal. So I will be buying equipment and providing gear for our engineering group to get together, and we need to study and develop how we are going to link DMR repeaters together, because I do believe before I pass this helm on to somebody else, we will be using DMR equipment in GMRS. So we're going to be proactive. We're not going to stand here and wait for the wave to hit us. We're going to be ready for it and just move on and face that next challenge right upon us. In summary, 21 linked repeater sites, 900 plus members, 49% of them are amateur radio, and we are the largest repeater-based network in the United States. And with that, I say, we are North Georgia GMRS. Thank you.
Can I ask you a question?
Questions? One question.
Who determines, when you're putting up the repeater, who determines which GMR frequency you're putting on?
We're very careful with that, very cautious with that, primarily me. I use a very expensive propagation program, and I try and basically do what CIRA does, and that is give adequate separation. I usually, for UHF repeaters, they like to see about 50 miles. So I try and pick a frequency that is around me that's 50 miles away in separation. Now, like I said earlier, repeaters don't talk to each other, but if you have a mobile over here on one mountaintop and a mobile here on another mountaintop, and you got another repeater, they can talk to each other. So you have to look at that. But the beauty of that is, is you just choose different PL tones, and you can coexist very nicely.
Would you have more leeway as to which channel, GMR channel you want to use? Or do you have to get permission from somebody else?
We are self-coordinating. The FCC has not mandated that we use a frequency coordinator or somebody like CIRA that does amateur radio. When I had my commercial frequencies, I had to do a licensing agent, and they did the coordination for me. So we try and mimic what they do to try and be good neighbors on that. And
The military, I think, does the same thing for their frequency.
sure. But that's kind of where that's at. Any other questions? Okay, very good. I'm going to turn this show over to Mr. Jeff Martin.